I really messed up. I lost the man I loved, and honestly, it was entirely my fault. I made some selfish choices that ended up hurting him, and I regret every bit of it. But what stings even more is that he walked away instead of staying to work things out with me. I kept wishing he would have stayed, helped me grow, helped me figure out how to make things right. Instead, he left, and now I'm stuck with nothing but the consequences of my own decisions. I had something great. A kind-hearted, thoughtful man. A genuinely good husband. And I threw all of that away for a fling that meant absolutely nothing. I met him when I was 19, and he was 21. It was at the library. Before that, I hadn't dated anyone, never even gone on a date. I was shy, focused on school, and completely uninterested in relationships. My priority was getting through university with good grades. He came up to me one day while I was studying, complimented me, and said he'd seen me around before. He said he'd like to get to know me better and asked for my number. I turned him down immediately. I wasn't comfortable sharing my number with anyone, and I had no desire to get romantically involved while I was still in school. Still, he kept showing up. Sometimes he'd approach the table where my friends and I were studying. Occasionally, he'd talk just to them. Other times, he'd sit with us and join the conversation like he'd always been part of the group. I started to get used to him being around. Watching him from a distance became part of my day, and over time I noticed how well he clicked with my friends. Then one day, he wasn't there. He didn't show up at all, and I felt this weird worry creeping in. I asked around, hoping someone knew where he was, but no one did. One of my friends even said, "His world doesn't revolve around you, maybe he got tired of waiting and moved on." Those words hit harder than I expected, and at the time, I didn't even fully understand why. Looking back now, I know exactly why it hurt. I was falling for him, even if I didn't want to admit it yet. The thought that he might have moved on crushed me. The next day, he was still gone, and my worry grew. I asked my friends again, thinking maybe he was sick or something had happened. I even asked if anyone had his number so I could check on him. But they reminded me that I told them not to get his number in the first place. That part seems ridiculous now. But on the third day, he showed up like nothing happened. Walked in with his usual group, said a few words to them, and then headed off to grab a textbook. This time, he picked up a book labeled CA 3001 and sat down at our table. For the first time, I noticed what class he was actually taking. I couldn't help myself. I blurted out, "Where were you? We didn't see you for 2 days." He gave me this teasing look and said, "Oh, she speaks," and the whole table cracked up. But I was serious. I'd missed seeing him, and I told him that, pushing my glasses up and looking at him directly. He looked surprised at first, then gave me a crooked smile. He really was something like a cartoon character brought to life. I don't know how I hadn't noticed how attractive he was before. He wasn't tall or overly muscular, but his face was handsome, and his eyes, those eyes deep, bright blue, like you could fall into them. His voice had this raspy quality that made your chest vibrate when he talked. It sounds silly, I know, but it's those little things I miss the most now. "You were worried about me," he said, half laughing, a little amused. "I'd believe it if you even knew my name." He wasn't wrong. I said, Stanley, trying to play it off, which only made everyone laugh again. He chuckled too. "That's a nickname I got way back in junior high. Everyone still calls me that, but it's not actually my name. And it's not Stan Lee like the Marvel guy, it's Stanley, one word." Then he got up and walked away, taking a seat at a different table. That had never happened before. He always sat with us. Watching him walk away like that made me feel terrible. I could tell I'd embarrassed him, and the guilt hit me hard. I kept sneaking glances over at him while chewing my nails, silently hoping he'd come back or at least glance in my direction. He never did. For 3 hours, he stayed buried in those textbooks. Exams were coming up, so it made sense, but still I felt like maybe I'd pushed him away. "If you're that worried, why don't you just go talk to him?" my friend Sophia nudged. I quickly dismissed the idea, putting my glasses back on and diving into my book again. I already knew the material pretty well and didn't need to keep reviewing it, but I kept flipping pages anyway, pretending to focus. Eventually, I gave in. I stood up, walked over to his table, and muttered an awkward little apology. He later told me it sounded like something out of a cheesy anime, and apparently, he found it adorable. He looked up, raised an eyebrow, and waited for me to say more. I sat down across from him, struggling to start a real conversation, and he picked up on my hesitation. He reassured me he wasn't mad. A little disappointed I didn't know his name, sure, but not upset. He said he moved because he needed to concentrate. There was an important exam coming up, and his professor wasn't the type to hand out good grades easily. Failing meant repeating the course, and he wasn't about to let that happen. Then, with a little smirk, he added that he would have stayed with us, but the problem was, he found it hard to focus with me sitting there. He'd rather watch me than read his books. That's when I finally asked him his real name. He closed his book, smiled, and said, "Daniel. Let me introduce you to Daniel," and held out his hand. I shook it, and as cheesy as it sounds, I always thought Daniel and Daniela made a great couple name. Still do. I just couldn't understand why I'd fumbled things so badly before. As I got up to leave, he gently grabbed my hand and said, "If you're free tomorrow after my test, I'd like to take you out." My heart just about leapt out of my chest. I was excited and nervous all at once. I knew if he had asked me just a little sooner, I would have said yes in a heartbeat. Even now, I felt butterflies. If I could go back in time, I'd do so many things differently. I would have put more effort into making him feel appreciated. I wouldn't have been so wrapped up in myself. But here I am, crying and talking to strangers online, replaying all the good memories I had with my Daniel. That first date we had? It was incredible. We clicked so well. He had a great sense of humor, always knew what to say, and carried himself with charm. I noticed the jealous glances from other girls whenever they saw us together. During that date, he told me he was runner-up for Mr. UCLA. And honestly, I wasn't surprised. He totally looked the part. There really weren't many guys out there who looked better than Daniel. Our relationship back in our UCLA days honestly felt like something straight out of a cheesy high school romance novel. He was always getting invited to parties, and whenever he went, we were glued to each other, walking in hand like we were the only two people that mattered. We became known around campus as one of those power couples, though let's be real, that was mostly thanks to him. Hardly anyone knew who I was until we started dating. Daniel was my first in every sense, my first date, first kiss, first love, everything. But I wasn't his first. He had lived a full life before me, tried it all except marriage. And he never held that over me. He was always kind and understanding, patiently explaining things I didn't know and rarely losing his temper. Still, I had this toxic tendency to compare our pasts, especially when it came to intimacy. Deep down, I started feeling like I was missing out. He was the only person I'd ever been with, and that thought really started to bother me. I wanted more experiences. I wanted stories of my own, things to brag about, things that weren't just about him. So in my twisted logic, I began to think maybe I should sleep with other men. You know, just to even the score. A few months into our marriage, I brought up the idea of opening things up. I'd hinted at it before, but his strong, immediate no had made me back off. I knew pushing the topic too hard might push him away for good. But one day, I asked again, more directly this time. "What would you do if we opened our marriage a little?" I said casually. He didn't hesitate. "I'd leave. No second chances," he said plainly. That answer made me furious. To me, it felt like he was being unfair, like he was trying to lock me into a box when he'd had his fun already before we got together. I waited a few more months, hoping he'd come around. But each time I tried to revisit the subject, he stood his ground. That only solidified a selfish thought in my mind. I'd just wait until after we got married. Maybe once we were husband and wife, he'd be more willing to compromise. When our wedding finally came and went, I decided it was time to push for what I wanted. I know now how incredibly selfish that was, to marry someone, fully aware of what he wanted and didn't want, just to do my own thing anyway. I honestly thought once I had him locked in, I could live out whatever fantasies I wanted, and he'd just deal with it. I couldn't have been more wrong. I didn't listen to him. I didn't try to see his side. And in the process, I ruined the only relationship where I truly felt loved just for being me. Years have passed since Daniel left, and no one, and I mean no one, has ever treated me with the love and care that he did. I lost the one man who really saw me. And I know I'll never get that kind of love again. Our honeymoon was supposed to be 4 blissful months together, but I destroyed what could have been a beautiful memory. We had been together for 5 years at that point, but I'd started having these thoughts, these cravings, about being with someone else 2 years before that. During our honeymoon, I even imagined what it would be like to be with another man, while Daniel watched. Just admitting that now makes me sick to my stomach. There's always some trigger, some temptation behind the biggest mistakes, and for me, that temptation had a name, Tom. He was 6 feet 5 inches, built like a Greek statue, and clearly put in serious hours at the gym. He dressed in tight clothes that showed off every muscle, and the man practically radiated confidence. I'm no shorty myself, I'm 6 feet 1 inch, so feeling small next to someone? That was new for me. Tom was the new guy at work and ended up becoming my direct superior. That meant I had to report to him every single day. He was older than Daniel, my ex-husband, and always spoke in this smooth, calculated tone, like everything he said was dipped in flirtation. Trying to stay professional around him while feeling that kind of pull? It was exhausting. And then one day, out of nowhere, he asked me if I wanted to grab a drink with him after work. I was stunned. Was he making a move? Was this just friendly? Was he interested, or was he just reading my body language and trying to take advantage? I didn't stop to think about Daniel. I didn't pause to consider how hurtful this might be. I just said yes. We went to a bar near the office, and I drank too much, way more than I should have. The conversation went from surface-level banter to deep, flirty talk that had no business being shared between two co-workers, especially not by a married woman. I opened up to him. Told him I didn't want to be just one man's woman. I confessed that I wanted to explore sexually without guilt. I even admitted I had feelings for him. He asked if I had talked to my husband about it. I said yes, but that Daniel didn't agree with my views. That he'd leave me if I went through with it. And Tom, with all the confidence in the world, told me I was going about it the wrong way. Instead of asking for permission, he said, I should just tell Daniel that this was how things were going to be. That I deserved to have my fun. And back then, I actually believed him. Looking back, it's clear he wasn't giving advice, he was manipulating me. He said what he said because he wanted to sleep with me. And that night, he made me feel special. The way Daniel always had. But because it was coming from someone new, it gave me this rush like I was 17 again, full of adrenaline and curiosity. The next day, we kissed and parted ways. When I got home, Daniel was asleep on the couch. He'd probably waited up for me, thinking I was still at work. I tiptoed to the bathroom, showered, brushed my teeth, and tried to mask the scent of alcohol. I was still a little buzzed, but functional. I woke him up gently and told him we needed to talk. He said he had something exciting to share too, but said I could go first. He had this big, bright smile on his face. That warm, soft look he always gave me when I had his full attention. But that smile faded fast, within seconds of me opening my mouth. I didn't even care. I had convinced myself that I was being honest and brave, doing what needed to be done. I said, I need to do this. I can't handle the fact that you've had all this experience and I've only been with you. It makes me feel like you settled for me. I don't want to be the girl you settled for. I want to feel desired by other men, just like you were desired by other women before we met. And I won't be happy unless I get to experience that. Then I said it, the line that shattered everything. We're opening up the marriage, and that's not up for discussion. And just like that, I watched the man who once gave me everything sit there and take that blow in silence. I remember how he stared at me, eyes searching mine, before finally lowering his head like all the fight had left his body. He didn't yell. He didn't cry. He just quietly said, well, you said your piece, so I guess that's that. He stood up, walked away, and went to the bedroom. Whatever he had wanted to share with me earlier, he never brought it up again. He said it didn't matter, that he was just tired from work. But I'll always wonder. The next morning, I ran straight into Tom's arms. We had sex in his office that same day. That was the beginning. Tom was just the first of many. Most Fridays, I'd go out with coworkers, drink too much, and end up in someone's bed, some random stranger I'd never see again. To say I was promiscuous is an understatement. I kept telling myself it was just a phase, something I'd grow out of eventually. But deep down, I knew I was spiraling. What I didn't realize, back when I thought I was discovering some kind of sexual freedom, was just how high the cost would be. I kept hooking up with different men, sometimes every day, sometimes every other. It became a habit I didn't see as dangerous until it was far too late. 2 months into that pattern, I was getting ready for work one morning when Tom came by my house. He was supposed to pick me up, assuming, like always, that Daniel had already left for his job. I figured it might be a good chance to sneak in a little action before heading to the office. But I was still in the shower, water pouring over my head, when Daniel answered the door. I didn't hear a word of their conversation over the sound of shampoo being rinsed out, but by the time I stepped out, they were out front, chatting like nothing was wrong. Daniel even cracked a joke, something I'll never forget. So you're the guy who sleeps with my wife while I'm out changing light bulbs. Daniel never wore his emotions on his sleeve. He wasn't the type to lash out, break things, or get visibly angry. You could never quite tell what he was really feeling. If he smiled or frowned, that was all you'd get. So when he said that line and still opened the door for me like a gentleman, I stupidly thought everything was fine. That he was okay with our open marriage. That maybe he didn't care as much as I thought. I got into Tom's car like it was just another day, having no idea I'd already lit the fuse that would blow everything up. On the drive to work, Tom laughed about the whole thing, said my husband was handling it surprisingly well. He even joked that Daniel might be a cuckold and tossed around disgusting suggestions like, if he wants to watch, we can set that up. It was a Friday, and for the last couple of months, Fridays had become my personal playground, drinks, hookups, total detachment. But that night was different. Instead of going out with coworkers, Tom booked us a hotel room, top floor, all glass windows, beautiful view of the city lights. We spent the night together. It was passionate, yes, but it also felt like something was quietly breaking inside me. Saturday morning rolled around, and when I came home, I immediately knew something was off. The air felt still, too quiet. Saturdays were Daniel's music days. He'd blast his favorite songs, especially Smooth Criminal, and fill the house with energy, even if I'd crawled in at dawn from a night out. But that morning? Nothing. I wandered into the home gym. The treadmill was off. No sign of Daniel there. I checked the kitchen, hoping maybe he was making his usual morning coffee. No coffee pot, but my favorite mug was sitting on the counter. For a second, it made me smile. That cup had been with us since we first moved in together, back before we even got married. It was a small comfort. I picked it up, expecting to sip some warmth, but it was empty. I took the lid off, and inside was an envelope. I can't tell you word for word what the letter said. I've read it 100 times, but the exact phrasing always blurs in my memory. What I do remember is the sinking feeling in my stomach as I realized what was happening. That letter became the keepsake of my worst failure. Proof of how I destroyed something beautiful for something meaningless. I left the envelope in the cup, which still faintly smelled like him, even after all this time. The note started with a "Hey, hope you're doing okay. You're probably wondering why Smooth Criminal isn't playing right now. By the time you read this, I'll be landing in South Africa. My company launched a 5-year tech initiative to train the brightest young minds in Africa, and I've accepted the lead position." He hadn't forgotten the cheating. He wasn't just disappearing to process it. This was a goodbye. "When I get back, we'll finalize the divorce. I hope being with Tom and the others was worth it. When you first brought it up, I thought it was a bad joke. But yesterday made everything clear." And then he hit me with the knife that cut the deepest. "I regret ever meeting you. If I could go back, I would have left the first time you said no. You're not worth the pain you've caused. And I won't pretend otherwise." There was no "I hope you find peace," no "maybe someday we'll talk." Just raw, brutal honesty. Inside the envelope was a flight ticket, dated Saturday, June 7, 2014, with my name on it. Tucked behind the ticket was a message: "Remember the news I shared 2 months ago? This was it. My company wanted both of us to go. They were offering you a job too." And at the very bottom of the mug, lying like a tombstone, was his wedding ring. That moment shattered everything. My chest tightened, my knees buckled, and I just sat there staring at that cup, empty, like my marriage, like my soul. I didn't eat. I didn't drink. I didn't sleep. I just stared. The next 12 months were some of the darkest of my life. I spiraled into a depression that felt endless. My world started falling apart, starting with the day Elias, Tom's best friend, came to our place with movers to collect all of Tom's things. I was a mess, crying non-stop, wearing the same clothes I'd had on since Friday. I begged Elias to let me keep a few things, a hoodie, some cologne. Surprisingly, he agreed, maybe out of pity. But he came back the next day. And this time, he wasn't kind. I was still in the same clothes, sitting on the floor like a ghost of myself, when he stormed in and yanked the hoodie out of my hands. He looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Stanley told me what you did. You've disgraced women everywhere. I hope this guilt follows you for the rest of your life." Then he grabbed the cologne and hissed, "If it weren't for the laws of this country, I'd spit in your face. I hope your life ends up as sad and empty as this room." He didn't hold back. He never had. And while those words crushed me in the moment, they hurt even more now, because he was right. My house has been empty ever since. Not just in furniture, but in soul. Just a week after that, Tom asked for a transfer, one that he initiated himself. I was stunned. I thought we had something, that maybe we were building toward a future. When I asked him why he was leaving, he didn't sugarcoat it. He told me straight up, "I had my fun. I'm done. I'm moving on." He even had the nerve to say I should think about closing my marriage with him before it got out of control, completely clueless to the fact that everything had already fallen apart. About a week after everything fell apart, I started a new job under a boss who didn't tolerate mistakes. He was strict, cold, and absolutely nothing like Tom. And maybe that's why things went downhill so fast. Without the emotional cushion of a romantic connection, I was just another underperforming employee. It wasn't long before I was fired. Then came the next blow: my parents disowned me. Elias had told them everything. Being ministers at our church, they couldn't accept what I had done. In their eyes, I was a disgrace, a woman who destroyed her own marriage just to feel another man's hands on her body. They wanted no part of me. I left the lines of communication open, hoping Tom would call. He never did. The 5 years Daniel mentioned in his letter came and went in total silence. No calls. No letters. No sign that he had returned to the country. I tried reaching out to Elias too, but I found out he had joined Daniel in South Africa a year later. That door closed too. And then the slow unraveling began. One by one, my friends started distancing themselves. Eventually, it became painfully clear that most of them hadn't really liked me at all. They tolerated me because I was Daniel's wife. Without him, I was just me. And apparently, that wasn't someone people enjoyed being around. That realization cut deep. I wasn't funny. I wasn't easygoing. I wasn't even kind. I was difficult, controlling, emotional, selfish. The kind of person who pushes others away and then acts surprised when they leave. But hitting rock bottom didn't just mean starting over. It meant going even lower than square one. I was stuck in this dark place alone, jobless, unloved. Now it's 2023. I'm 36 years old. Nearly a decade has passed, and I haven't had a single relationship last longer than 3 months. I'm deeply unhappy with the life I've built or failed to build. Some nights, I pray that I'll just fall asleep and never wake up again. Sometimes, in my lowest moments, I still blame Daniel for walking away instead of fighting for us. But deep down, I know the truth. He warned me. He told me what he needed. I just didn't listen. I wish any woman even thinking about opening up her marriage would read this and take it as the flashing red warning sign that it is. Don't do it. You have no idea what you might lose. Even after all this time, I still cling to the hope that one day I'll see Daniel again. Not to get him back, but to apologize. To tell him I never moved on. That even now, nearly 10 years later, I still love him. That breaking his heart was the worst mistake I've ever made. That I wanted a life with him, a future, a family, everything. But there's no erasing the past. Whenever I try to date, it always comes up. And when it does, I can literally see the light go out in the other man's eyes. No one wants to be with the woman who destroyed her husband for something as selfish as exploring. I've tried to move forward, but I've failed at almost every turn. I still live in the small bungalow Daniel and I bought together. We chose it because we wanted a cozy home, just big enough for the two of us and maybe a child or two. That dream never came true. I desperately need closure. But I haven't been able to afford therapy in years. I haven't held a steady job since I was fired by the man who replaced Tom almost 10 years ago. Money's tight, and life feels stuck. Thank you for taking the time to read this long, painful journey. Update: it's been about 2 months since I first posted this, and a few things have changed. For those who missed the original post, this is a follow-up to how my husband, well, ex-husband now, left me after I decided to open our marriage. 9 years later, I've finally realized just how empty my life has become without him. I didn't just lose a husband. I lost everything. My family, my friends, my sense of self. Most of the people who stuck around did so for Daniel, not me. But, surprisingly, something happened I never expected. Daniel called. I think he read my post, or maybe someone forwarded it to him. Either way, he reached out. The second I heard his voice, deep, raspy, familiar, I broke down sobbing. I had missed that voice more than I ever admitted to myself. We talked for hours. I cried the entire time as I listened to him explain how deeply I'd hurt him. He said at first, he honestly believed I was joking, that maybe it was one of my weird April Fool's pranks. But when he saw me with Tom, something inside him broke. He blamed himself for staying so long, for trusting me when I didn't deserve it. He also explained why he never came back after the 5 years. It took him that long to start healing. Toward the end of the program in South Africa, he finally began feeling whole again. He said he avoided me on purpose, not because he hated me, but because he couldn't risk losing that fragile new piece. I shared what my life had become since he left. He listened. He didn't interrupt. Just let me talk as I poured out nearly a decade's worth of pain. At the end of the call, he told me he'd be back in the US within the week and that he planned to visit. And he kept his word. He showed up at my doorstep exactly 1 week later, not to get back together, but to bring the divorce papers. He walked through the house and saw everything, the same furniture, the empty rooms, the dust on the shelves. Nothing had changed. It was like time had stopped the day he left. He noticed the cup I'd kept, the one with the letter and his ring still at the bottom. He didn't say anything right away. Just took it in. For the first time ever, I saw something in Daniel's eyes I'd never seen before: pity. Not anger, not sadness. Just quiet, heavy pity. He asked about my life, and I shared more with him. He even asked about Tom, though he didn't say his name. He just called him the tall, not-so-handsome musclehead. I told him the truth. Tom was in and out in 2 months. And that was it. Daniel clicked his tongue, something he picked up during his years abroad, and shook his head. So you tossed away 7 years for just 2 months of sex, he said flatly. He then asked how it was, how it compared. And I didn't lie. No one ever touched me the way Daniel did. He understood me. He cared. He wasn't just chasing the moment, he was there for the connection, the intimacy. I gave all that up for cheap, forgettable encounters that left me emptier each time. Daniel didn't gloat. He didn't scold me. He just looked at me for a long moment, then said he'd cover the cost of therapy if I was willing to go. He told me he'd moved on, and that I should try to as well. In that moment, just for a second, he made me feel seen again. Loved. Important. And then, he left. The divorce is finalized now. It's over. But for the first time in years, I've started therapy thanks to Daniel's generosity. I still regret every choice that led me here. I still grieve the man I lost. But for the first time, I feel like there's a sliver of light ahead. A reason to try again. It took me 36 years to realize it, but I want to be better. Not for someone else. For me. Thank you, truly, for reading this. I hope this is the last time I ever have to write something like this. I hope next time, if there is one, it'll be about healing, not regret. And maybe, just maybe, I can finally move forward.